These numbers are insane. Mark Fletcher Jr. might be the MVP of the college football playoff so far.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC and host of Postgame on the Hurricanes Radio Network. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the #1 Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The college football playoff is here for one final huge game, and FanDuel is the best place to get into the action all playoff long. So visit FanDuel.com to get your college football playoff profit boosts every game day. On this episode, we'll talk Darian Mensah because it looks like this is happening, that Miami is poised to land the former standout Duke Blue Devils quarterback. And on a related note, the national hate levels for your Miami Hurricanes are returning to 1980s intensity. It's as if Jimmy Johnson is coaching the team again. It's as if Michael Irvin is no longer on the sidelines, but back on the field. The hate is back, and we're loving it. But let's talk Mark Fletcher as we head into this matchup against the Indiana Hoosiers. If you have a pulse and you're paying attention to the game so far, obviously you've seen how well Miami's junior running back is playing. You've seen how much he's raised his stock. And by the way, he commented on his future. We'll get to those numbers in a second. Well, those quotes in a second. But first on the numbers, this is pretty remarkable. This comes from ESPN's Bill Connolly, and this was posted by my good friend Josh Darrow, Miami Hurricanes sideline reporter. So this is total yards from scrimmage so far in the college football playoff. And not only is Mark Fletcher on top of that list in total yards per scrimmage, it's not even close. Miami's running back has 420 yards from scrimmage. Next in line, Kewan Lacey at 311 from Ole Miss. Stribling at 278. You have to go down to Kalen Black, one of the running backs from Indiana at 173. Now, do keep in mind, Indiana has played 2 playoff games. Miami has played 3, but still, Fletcher is outpacing anyone on Indiana when it comes to yards from scrimmage. Black at 173 and Roman Hemby at 142 yards from scrimmage. Malachi Toney, by the way, is on this list with 143 yards from scrimmage so far. But folks, I think that the numbers and that chart, like, that speaks louder than words. Mark Fletcher Jr. has been statistically the most productive offensive skill position player. Obviously, this doesn't include the yards that quarterbacks have thrown for, but Mark Fletcher, not even close when it comes to yards from scrimmage so far this postseason. He has been absolutely dominant. And you could make an argument that Mark Fletcher Jr. has been the MVP of the CFP to this point. Now, I know a lot of people will say, and I'm not necessarily going to argue it, Fernando Mendoza, who hasn't had to throw for like huge yardage in these first 2 Indiana playoff games, but he's thrown 8 touchdowns to 0 interceptions. He's obviously been fantastic. Again, I'm paying attention. America is paying attention, but I hope you're paying attention to what Mark Fletcher has been doing so far in these playoffs. And let me give you a couple of other numbers for Fletch. In the postseason, 6.81 yards per carry. Not so bad for a guy who's known as a battering ram, and a lot of people try to pigeonhole him as a short yardage guy or whatever you want to say about Fletch. I don't know why my light went out. I'm back. Illumination is back. Kurt Signetti is trying to sabotage my lighting here on Locked On Canes. 6.81 yards per carry for Fletch in the playoffs. And how about this? 8.7 yards per carry in fourth quarter so far in these first 3 CFP games. That's a hell of a stat for any running back, and it illustrates he gets stronger later in the game for a guy who's 6'3", 225 pounds. Yeah, he wears down defenses Miami's offensive line, I give them credit for wearing down opposing defensive fronts and allowing Fletcher to take over late in games. Remember the 56-yard touchdown. It wasn't even a touchdown. It was a 56-yard play to set up a touchdown that he had against Texas A&M in the playoffs, was the longest of his career so far. Fletcher, I mentioned 420 yards from scrimmage. He's got 395 rushing yards, and 114 of those have come in fourth quarters so far this year. And we all know Fletch is an amazing story. His mother, God bless Mama Fletcher, she's had to drive because she doesn't like airplanes. I don't think any of us do, but I still fly. Mama Fletcher doesn't fly. She drives. She has driven about 18,000 miles, couple of trips to Texas, to College Station, and to Dallas, and a drive out to Phoenix, Arizona. I'm so glad for her. I'm so glad for Mark. I'm so glad for that family. And, of course, rest in peace and God rest the soul of Big Mark, Mark's father, who passed away last year. But I'm so glad for Mark's mother that she gets a home game, right? I know that the schedule says Indiana is the home team and Miami is the road team, but this is in stadium Miami plays in, and Mama Fletcher is not going to have to travel very far for this one, and I'm so happy about that. And how about this quote from Fletcher? And shout out to Justice Sandel from Miami's SI site for putting this out there this morning at Media Day. Because remember, guys, Fletcher, it was announced before the Texas A&M game, which was before he was putting on all these playoff heroics, that he's going to return for his senior season next year at Miami. But since he's done what he's done in the playoffs, it's made a lot of Miami fans think and wonder, is he sure he's staying in college? Because, the NFL stock, it's rising based on the way he's played in the postseason. Here's what Fletcher had to say today. I just love this program. He said, I felt like I'm not finished yet. I know a lot of people are telling me to leave, but I just feel like I've got more to do here. Even though I know there's some risk in playing the running back position, I just feel like God's got me. So I know I'll be straight no matter what I do. Remember that quote and remember it for decades. Mark Fletcher is a Miami legend, and he is only going to add to that legend in 2026 when he comes back, even though he didn't have to. And he's right. Like, even if he wouldn't be projected as a first-round pick in this draft, most running backs that are in his situation would choose to get to the NFL as early as they possibly can because of the risks and the shelf life that comes with playing that position. Mark Fletcher Jr., this man bleeds orange and green, and we're so lucky to have him, and we're so lucky to have the Fletcher family, and I am so grateful for what they're doing here. Let's get an injury update. I don't think there's been too many drastic changes from when we talked about this on Tuesday, except for one. There is one, I guess, drastic change. So Miami put out their availability report on Thursday night or Friday night, and unfortunately, tight end Elijah Lofton is out. So he's not going to play. Miami's going to be down a tight end, and an important one. And I know Lofton had his ups and downs throughout the season, but on that play where he got injured, he took a hard hit, as we all saw, but he held on to the football for a huge first down against Ole Miss. And Lofton has had some great moments this year. And, this is one of those games where you love to have all hands on deck no matter what. And Miami's going to be down a pretty important player with Elijah Lofton not playing in this one. So expect to see a lot of Alex Bauman at tight end, and maybe expect to see some Luka Gilbert possibly in this game. I know we're not going to see Brock Schott because he transferred to Indiana, and Kurt Cignetti is downloading his brain into that Indiana mainframe computer right now to get as much data as possible on Miami. But Elijah Lofton is out. Damari Brown, Mario Cristobal said, is trending toward a game-time decision. And Brown, again, expressed he's not sure if he's going to be able to go, but he's going to go through warm-ups, I think, and make the decision there. That's a physical cornerback that Miami has been without Damari Brown throughout the playoffs, but you could really use him, especially since Mario Cristobal confirms that Xavier Lucas, he is going to miss the first half of the national championship due to his targeting ejection against Ole Miss. So this answers the questions you all had about whether or not there was a successful appeal. No, there wasn't. So you can expect Ethan O'Connor to play a lot, and I think we're going to see Jabari Antoine in the mix as well. Jabari Antoine, a first-year player, who's done very well in limited reps. We'll see how well he holds up. But in terms of the good news, OJ Frederick, another starting corner, good to go. Akeem Mesidor, one of the best edge rushers in America, good to go. Now, Mesidor is going to play with a brace over his elbow that he banged up in the Ole Miss game, but Mesidor is going to play, and that's your injury update, folks. And, of course, we get more info on Sunday, on early Monday. We will give it to you. But coming up next, Miami, this makes us feel comfortable, folks. This is where we love to be. Miami has become the most hated team in America again. Somehow, even Lane Kiffin cannot take away from the hate that Miami is getting right now. You want to keep it locked right here? We're only getting started on this brand new Locked On Canes. My friends, the college football playoff is here. We got one big game left, and FanDuel is giving all customers even more ways to get into the action every single game day in these playoffs. Because right now, for game day on Monday, FanDuel users get a profit boost waiting for them in the app for the college football playoff championship. Here's what I love about it. You get to use the profit boost on the bets you already feel good about. You're taking a shot on Miami as the underdog. Miami plus 8.5, or Miami on that money line plus 265. You get that profit boost. Or you can build a parlay around the players and the moments you think decide the game. You think Mark Fletcher is going to go over 100 yards? I know that doesn't happen against Indiana very often, but Fletch might be the guy to do it. You can take your shot. You can take your shot on Carson Beck throwing for a touchdown, Malachi Toney catching a touchdown or throwing for a touchdown. Then you apply the profit boost and go after even bigger winnings. And when you win, FanDuel pays out instantly, which is perfect for playoff football. FanDuel is the best place to get into the action all playoff long. So visit FanDuel.com to get your college football playoff profit boosts on every game day. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen. And folks, make sure, if you haven't yet, if you're an everydayer, join the Everydayer Club. Sign up for that all-access tier, and you get exclusive newsletters, ad-free episodes, exclusive episodes, the Canes Colada, which is just for the all-access members of the Everydayer Club, one-on-one text access with me. Click the link in the show notes below or go to lockedoncanes.supercast.com to become an all-access member of the Everydayer Club today. And speaking of the Everydayers, huge shout out and thank you to all the great folks that showed up to meet me and the truth teller, Bruce Warner, and Brad Tejeda, who's a common member of our show here, and also Gio Million stopped by. But all the fans and the listeners who stopped by to say pictures, to take pictures with us, and to talk football with us. Thank you so much to the Everydayers that saw us earlier today on Saturday at Caneswear, and we're going to try to do more of those meet and greets next season when big games come up. So thank you guys so much. All right, so as you guys know, things have been trending pretty quickly with Darian Mensah, the Duke quarterback. He intends to enter the transfer portal. He submitted his request before yesterday's deadline. So assuming that paperwork gets filed, Darian Mensah will officially be in the transfer portal. And now the crystal balls are rolling in, like 24/7 Sports, On3 Sports. The Donno ball has been placed on Darian Mensah to Miami. I strongly believe Darian Mensah will be the next quarterback of the University of Miami to become now the man who takes over for Carson Beck next year. So I believe this will be a done deal by January 21st. That's on Wednesday. And the reason why I think it's going to be done by Wednesday is because that's the deadline to enroll for the spring semester at Miami. So to make it work academically, so he can be on campus going through workouts and then participate in spring ball, which starts in March, he needs to enroll at Miami by January 21st. So I believe we'll have full announcement and full signing by then, if not before then. But January 21st is the date to watch. And, when we talk about the hate reaching 1980s levels, all that I see on social media, All that I see when I turn on college football content, and I consume a lot of it, is national outrage at Miami for quote unquote stealing Mensah from Duke right before the portal closed. And can I just say something that, people always throw out there like, oh, it's so dirty that they're doing this right before the deadline. Like, okay, so what's the purpose of having a deadline? Like, if Mensah left before the deadline, then why is the outrage? If he had done it after the deadline, then I could understand outrage. But the reason why there's a deadline, so what if he did it 6-7 hours before the deadline? I mean, it's crazy that people are like accusing Mensah of committing some awful, heinous crime because he had the audacity to request to enter the portal before the deadline, but it wasn't far enough before the deadline, I guess. Now, Mensah, I'll give you 4 points on this. Number one, Mensah made his decision to leave Duke, and seemingly we expect him to end up at Miami. And my understanding is that this decision was made without any impermissible contact between him and Miami. So a lot of people are trying to define what is tampering. How did Miami tamper? They definitely tampered. So, I mean, the impermissible part of it would be if he had a meeting or direct contact with a member of Miami's staff. That's not usually how these things get done, folks. Usually an intermediary reaches out to another intermediary. And in fact, in this particular case, don't be surprised if you find out that Mensah's people reached out to Miami's people first, not vice versa. So this was not impermissible. Point number 2. It sounds as though a negotiation for a form of a buyout could be happening behind the scenes to get him released from his NIL deal with Duke. People have brought up a point, because this was written by Pete Thamel of ESPN, that the revenue sharing contract that Mensah signed with Duke last year, the 2-year deal, does not include a buyout. But the contract not including a buyout does not mean that a buyout can't be negotiated. And that could be what's happening right now. Point number 3, when things like this happen, and this is an address to the outrage, right? And it's like people are mad at Mensah. They're mad at Miami. They feel so terrible for Duke. When things like this happen, just remember that Miami is operating within the confines of the chaotic system that is college football in 2026. It's the wild, wild west. And the reasonable people out there are actually analyzing this as a don't hate the player, hate the game scenario where, Miami is operating in a chaotic way, in a chaotic system, but they're doing it within the rules of that system. Spoiler alert, there aren't many rules. So Miami is operating accordingly within this chaotic system, that in order to survive in this chaotic era of college football, you need to embrace and thrive within that chaos. And that's exactly what Miami is doing here. And it's pretty wild that 3 straight years, Miami was able to land Cam Ward, which was a grand slam home run very late in the process 2 years ago. Miami was able to do the same thing with Carson Beck very late in the process. And now you're playing in a national championship game. And now Miami is widely expected to pull Darian Mensah, who threw for just under 4,000 yards last year with just 6 interceptions to 34 touchdowns, which is insane. This is a very, very good player. In fact, he could very well be better than all of the other quarterbacks that Miami missed out on during this portal period. Now, point number 4, all of the hate that Miami is getting, it makes me feel warm and fuzzy inside. People are framing Duke as a victim here, even though the circumstances behind Duke taking Mensah from Tulane last year was a little suspicious. So what goes around comes around. And okay, while this Mensah saga is playing out, you simultaneously, while this is happening with Darian Mensah in Miami, also going on right now is you have Lane Kiffin being accused of leaking NIL deals of Ole Miss players in order to create discord at his former team, sabotage to entice their players to enter the portal and go to LSU. Lane Kiffin has been accused of, having former Ole Miss players of his on speed dial to allegedly tamper with, and he likely used those six assistant coaches that he hired from Ole Miss as sleeper agents to recruit Ole Miss players to LSU. And despite all of that going on, the college football establishment is all of a sudden completely ignoring Lane Kiffin in order to yell about Darian Mensah in Miami. To anyone who thinks the U doesn't carry weight, think again. Miami is very much back when it comes to being hated and being despised. I think a lot of Miami fans like operating in this territory. So, we mentioned, Mark Fletcher is doubling down on his decision to stay at the U for the 2026 season. We're still not sure what Markel Bell is going to do. Miami's starting left tackle, and Big Bell is a great story. I mean, Miami, he obviously, you can't teach the size of 6'9", 245. So the Hurricanes clearly saw the potential in Bell, but having taken Markel Bell from junior college, a raw prospect, to be able to, facilitate him in reaching his potential and seeing him under the guidance and tutelage of Alex Mirabal and Mario Cristobal and how hard Markel has worked at Miami, for him to become just the monstrous dancing bear that he's become on Miami's offensive line, it's been really remarkable. And, again, like Bell is going to have to decide, if, because we know CeCe Mauinoa is going to be a first-round pick. Markel Bell likely would not be, but he's going to have to decide if he wants to leave for the draft. And he said, I'm still figuring it out, he said. What I'm really focused on is Monday night and just going 1-0, he said. So, both options are on the table for him. Leaving a year early or coming back and playing one more at Miami, that's on the table for him. Miami obviously seems to have their backup plan potentially. The Hurricanes hosted former 5-star offensive tackle out of high school and been a standout with Colorado, Jordan Seaton. Miami hosted him this weekend for a visit, and there's been some positive buzz there. And I also think that what's going on with Miami with the Darian Mensah buzz, that could help land Jordan Seaton, because you obviously know, which quarterback you're going to be blocking for and how good the team you're going to be on next year is. Miami has also hosted Damon Wilson, top edge rusher, which I would love to see the positive trends continue there. Like if Miami could close out this transfer portal by landing the trifecta of Damon Wilson, Jordan Seaton, and Darian Mensah, we're partying, all right? And listen, if Miami wins on Monday night, the party will never stop. And then you add big transfer dubs like that. If Miami can get them all over the finish line, we're not going to stop partying. However, I will say, though, with Jordan Seaton, beware of the lane, because he is on his way to Baton Rouge. That's going to be his next visit is to LSU. I don't know if Lane intercepted him at Miami International Airport and pulled him on a plane to Baton Rouge or what Lane did, but we got to worry about LSU trying to steal this one. He visited Mississippi State already and then Miami, and now Seaton is on his way to Baton Rouge. So you have to watch out there because, obviously Lane has already taken one Miami target in Sam Levitt, although him taking Sam Levitt might, be the reason why Miami lands Darian Mensah. So maybe thank you, Lane, for that one, but no thank you if you steal Jordan Seaton. Meanwhile, Miami landed, and I'm so sorry I didn't do an episode for these guys yet, two kickers in one night on Friday night. We got Jack Olson from Northwestern, Jake Weinberg from Florida State. Welcome to the U. Miami's going to have a kicker competition again next year like they just did this season. We'll talk about that and so much more as we head to the national title game right here on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. You want to keep it locked. And thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen. Make sure you make Locked On ACC your next listen. Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack and I host that show. We take you around the ACC. Didn't imagine we'd be talking football this late into January, but thanks to the Hurricanes, they've kept ACC football afloat here. All right, so Jake Weinberg, who's a South Florida kid, played at Florida State, kicked at Florida State the last couple of years. This past year was his first year as the starting place kicker. He committed to the Miami Hurricanes. Now, I know I already had FSU fans in my mentions actually thanking me for taking Weinberg off their hands. Obviously, you want him to kind of focus on his accuracy. I know that there was something, I think, mechanical with him, where he was pulling some kicks to the right that he like worked on that. He like changed his mechanics to become a little bit more accurate. So like Weinberg is working on it. Now this past season, he went 12 for 19 from field goals. He was 46 for 46 on extra points. From the different ranges, he went 3 for 3 from 20 to 29 yards, 6 for 8 from 30 to 39, 3 for 6 from 40 to 49, and 0 for 2 from 50 plus. So we'll see if Weinberg can kind of hone that accuracy a little bit at Miami. But they didn't put all their eggs in one basket, because the Hurricanes also landed Jack Olson, who's I think a sixth-year guy now. Don't ask me how he got that many years of eligibility, but Jack Olson from Northwestern's got one more year of college apparently. Who I don't know. Maybe I'd lean to thinking that Olson could have the edge to win the field goal kicker job, and maybe Weinberg has a chance to be the kickoff specialist. Although I thought that was going to happen this year. I thought Bert Auburn would be Miami's field goal kicker and Carter Davis would be the kickoff specialist, and Davis flat out won a competition against Auburn, and Miami's going to do that again. So they've got their eggs in two separate baskets. Jack Olson this year at Northwestern, I was going to say Miami Northwestern. No, Northwestern in Chicago. He went 19 for 21 overall this season. It was 24 for 25 on extra points. From the different ranges, Olson went 5 for 7 on 20 to 29, 12 for 12 on 30 to 39, 2 for 2 on 40 to 49, did not attempt to kick over 50 yards. So it's weird. His only two misses were within 29 yards. I don't know if that's like a hash situation where maybe there's a certain angle he doesn't kick well from. But overall, like he had a pretty good year. More so, I guess, than Weinberg. But, I think Weinberg, he's younger. He's got potential, working on his mechanics. So we'll see how the competition goes. And, man, I just spent at least the last 3.5 minutes talking about place kickers. I give kickers some love. My father's from Italy. I love soccer. I respect kicking. So we had to give the kickers some love. And, folks, I want to send a shout out. I'm in like a shout out kind of mood today. I don't talk a whole lot about my family, but I want to give a shout out to my son, Luca, and my nephew, Andreas, who are best friends, even though they live in different states. Luca and Andreas, my son and my nephew, they are best friends, and they are united in their love for Miami Hurricanes football. My son watches every game. I took him to his first game this past season. He has been living and dying with Miami Hurricanes football. He's so excited that Miami's in the national title game, but he doesn't know how spoiled he is. Now, I was spoiled growing up in the 80s and 90s, but he's very lucky he wasn't born like 10 years earlier, because he would have had to go through a lot of mediocrity. The first year he started to pay attention to college football was last year with Cam Ward, which was a lot of fun. And then this year, Miami's in the Natty game. And then my nephew, Andreas, shout out to him. He lives in Norman, Oklahoma. He lives within spitting distance of whatever they call their stadium there. Like my sister and her husband are professors at OU, and they root for the Miami Hurricanes, which is bold to do that in Sooner territory. So shout out to my nephew, huge Hurricanes fan, and shout out to my son. And let's bring this Natty home, boys. Let's bring this national championship. Let's keep it home in the 305. Oh, man, I've had so much fun on this episode, my friends. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to Locked On Canes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your pods. Now, later before the game, obviously we got 2 days left, either Sunday or Monday, we are going to do a crossover episode with Locked On Hoosiers. So we're going to get the Indiana angle. I'll give you the Miami angle, and we're going to talk shop. I love the crossover episodes. So we'll talk to you next time on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.